Okay, let's give this a go then. Google to the rescue. All I do is type the plant name in. So we'll start with this one, Gentianum. Okay, depending on how you've got your settings set, but the way I've got it set, I'll always get some pictures up, a wealth of pictures, and yeah, those pictures look like my plant. So I think we're on the right track for a start. When you do this on Google, this site, www.orchidspecies.com, will come up in the list. And under more circumstances than not, you will get good information from that site. Now, going down the list, we've got Andy's Orchids, might have a bit on it. Now, that's worrying, because Andy's Orchids has got that listed as Dendrobium gentianum with Chapiense in brackets. That could be fun. I might have picked on two good ones here. You get various orchid forums will come up. You can go and have a read on that. That's often somebody that's got the plant for the first time, and you know, is just asking a little bit about how to look after it, or they've got one that's going wrong and they want to, you know, a bit of help as to know why. You know, forums serve their purpose. So does YouTube, as we all know. There's another interesting fact I've just seen. Now, I don't like saying this because of its connotations, but the word was used from a long time ago, and basically it looks like Gentianum comes into the Negro hirsute group. Now that's interesting on the grounds that that group of dendrobiums do not rest properly in the winter. And where have I just taken mine? Up into the bedroom to rest it. So that one's coming down again. I didn't realise that. Again, you can do research on the types of dendrobiums. You could do that as a separate path. But anyway, let's go to Orchid Species, which is my first port of call. You normally get reasonable information. You'll get a close-in picture, if they've got one. Some of the really rare stuff, you might not have a picture, especially if it's recently been discovered and yet to bloom, perhaps. There's a little bit of interesting information. It comes from the Jaintia Hills. That's its common name in the area where it grows. It also says it's the northeastern part of India. That ties in with a talk we had from the lady who looks after all of the orchids at Kew Gardens in London, all outskirts of London, and that's where she comes from. So a lot of the orchids she talked about were from that area, and she gave us good information on how the weather patterns go, how the seasons change, the types of places the orchids come from, and all that sort of stuff. Now that is incredibly limited information for this site. It's telling me nothing, apart from the fact it's found in Assam, India, where it blooms in the fall and winter. And the person who's in charge of this site, who sort of keeps it going and everything, has said, I have no way of verifying this determination, so please use with caution. That normally means oh, just while we're there, that Negro hirsute group is the section Formoseae, says there. See, now again, I didn't know that. I don't necessarily need to know that, but these are all snippets of information. But I've got nothing about that plant from this site. Not a trickle, apart from where it comes from. Now I can go away and find out the weather patterns and everything of that area, where it comes from. But I already know those, so I don't need to. Most of the forests in that area are either deciduous or semi-deciduous. So a dendrobium epiphyte grows on trees, yeah? So I can assume that in the summer, when the trees are in full leaf, this gets shade and is highly unlikely to be in full sun. It's more likely to be shaded. The weather patterns in this area change. As the rainy wet season with the heat disappears into the autumn period, the rains slow down during that period, and the temperatures drop a bit, and that triggers the deciduous trees into autumn, and I suspect they get some nice colours like we do. Irrelevant. And eventually, as they go into winter, the rains slow right down almost to a stop, so we get into this dry period. But I don't say dry period, I say drier period, because they don't go months and months with no rain at all. They do get a bit now and again, but with the lower temperatures, that water that falls would last longer. It's not going to evaporate immediately, it's going to hang around a bit more. So the plants do get a little bit of moisture. Also in that area, boy do they get some mist and fog. Fills the whole valleys and creeps up the valleys into the woodlands and everything. If you were a plant under those conditions, you'd be soaking wet. So again, not totally dry. And that's all I'm going to get for this. Everything I've added in there is just from past experience of that area, having listened to a very authoritative talk on the weather patterns and seen lots of pictures of the natural woodlands and orchids growing in their natural state. So I've got that to fall back on. Not everybody has that luxury. So all I've got out of this is where the hell it comes from and which group of dendrobiums this one actually belongs to. Just while we're there, that is a lovely flower. That orange is intense, and you can just about see it probably if the camera picks it up. These are sparkly. These have got little sparkles all over them, and if you catch the light right, it shines. They're really attractive. Anyway, not a lot of information about that. That's not very good. This site's normally a lot better on something like that. I'm only going back to there because I can't be asked to type dendrobium again. So by getting back to... So let's replace Gentianum by Chapaense and see what comes up. So we've got images, yeah? Orchid species again comes up, top of the list. Let's go and have a look and see what it says about this one then. Again, it shows a picture of the bloom. You can see that these two blooms are quite similar. They both have a base of white and they both have orange in the lip and a few sort of frilly bits on the lip. They are attractive. That's even worse. There's something up with these two plants. The information's not there. Now that's very rare. I'm going to have to deal with that. But if you look at where this one comes from, it comes from northern Vietnam. Sorry, my mouth will not work. More coffee. Nurse. And blooms in the late summer and early fall. So it has similarities. And again, this one comes from the same group. The Formosaceae group. That also means that one shouldn't be getting a rest. So that's another one to come down out of the bedroom. I'm glad I started this. Anyway, that's next to nothing. What we've actually got is pretty pictures. Not very good. So I'm going to have to just rely on information about similar orchids found in similar places. Not good at all. That site's let me down. Let's just go back and see if there's anything else that can come up. What else have we got? There's a German site there, Kopf Orchidine. That's got some information. That site is probably actually in German. There's one from the Far East with probably Chinese or Vietnamese writing on. I can't read that. Now, what's this one called? Species Identification Task Force. What's this all about then? Species Identification Task. I know, I've been to this site before. This is where people submit a plant to be absolutely 100% confirmed. Now, somebody obviously here put in a Chapaense to actually have its identity confirmed, and they confirmed it to be Gentianum. But that's not going to give me any information about the flipping thing. Back up to the list. This is the game. You just have to go down your list and see what you can find. What else have we got? Andy's Orchids. I know there won't be much on that. I suppose we can have a look. That comes up. I don't quite know how that gets so high on the hit list. What have we got then? See, now this one's got Gentium brackets Chapayense. Yeah? And it says it's indigenous to Vietnam. Well, one of them isn't. It's from northern India. And last I looked on the map, that's nowhere near Vietnam. Anyway, what does it say? Fall to winter blooming, we already found out that. Very bright indirect light, that's useful. We didn't get that on the other sites. What else have we got? Cool to intermediate to warm. In other words, variable and probably quite tolerant. It implies up to 40 degrees. Oh, this is Fahrenheit. I wish people would stick to centigrade. I've forgotten that. That hasn't been used since I was at school. Anyway, from 40 degrees minimum, well, that's not too much above freezing, so this can take some cold. That doesn't mean to say it needs it, it just can take it. It also has a maximum of 95 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever the hell that is in centigrade. It's tolerant of extremes, favouring cool. So obviously the best way to keep this is in quite bright light without letting it get too hot. And I would suggest from both of those environments, northern India, those Gentium hills and things, that area there, and northern Vietnam, in their wet season, it's wet. They get a lot of rain. So in its growing season, when it's warmer and there's plenty of rain around, if you're looking after either of these two, I would suggest they get watered and to a degree fed reasonably well in their growing season. But that's like most dendrobiums anyway. What else have we got? It likes to be moist, but let it dry between waterings. Now, not all dendrobiums fit into that category. The Dendrobium phalaenopsis types, they don't like to go dry. And I've got some others out in the grow room who are supposed to be medium moist. In other words, not flooded, not sitting in water and soggy media. No, I don't think there's any dendrobiums will put up with that for long without their roots dying. But basically, when you water it, give it a flipping good soak in the growing season and get it wet. And then let it get to almost, if not dry, and then water it again straight away. In other words, don't leave it dry for any length of time. So, I don't normally get much information off this site, but for once I got more than I did off orchid species. That's unusual. What else have we got lurking around that we could have a look at? Elite orchids. That might just be somebody selling them, but again, we can have a look. See, now immediately that comes up with a picture that to me is wrong straight away. That is nowhere near enough orange in that bloom. So that could be a variation. Many orchids have got variations in the amount of colour, especially in the centre of the lip and round the edges of the petals and sepals. That's where the variation often occurs. It can be to do with light levels, types of feed that it's getting, where it's getting its nutrients from. We've got a lot of pictures on this site and information, absolutely nothing. So pretty pictures, but not a lot of good for anything else. Now, something I don't normally resort to, orchid board. Let's just have a quick look at orchid board. You sometimes get some good stuff on there. Now this is like a blog, so this is people put up questions and anybody can put answers on once they're registered, so you've got no guarantee that the answers are correct. They could just be somebody's own experience, but if it's working for them, it won't be that bad. What have we got then? I got this dendrobium from Vietnam labelled as dendrobium, I can't say that, SCHRAUTII, but its flower does not agree. It is definitely belonging to the Formoseae section, formerly known as Negro Hirsute. Blah, 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 blah. but the guy has seen a picture which resembles his closely, which was named Chapiense. Could anybody help? And then somebody else comes straight out with it's Dendrobium longicornu. Yeah, well, that's something we're not interested in. Let's see what else we've got. There are about 3 species similar to these. I think the one above is Chapiense, coming from North Vietnam, and that's not very good. Not many entries in there at all, so not a good blog on that plant. I'm going to go over the page. I don't normally have to do this, but who knows what's on the next page. Wikipedia is not normally very good. It just isn't. Sometimes you get a little smattering of information, but it's normally so basic as to be it's more interested in who found it, who registered it, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So that's not a lot of use. What else have we got? The plant list. That sounds like it might be interesting. Let's have a look at that. See what that says. Is an accepted name. Nope, nothing there of any use. Apart from a list of places where you might get some more information, but not this time. We've got time to go into all of those. What else have we got? That's in a foreign language. Uniprot. I've never heard of that one. Okay, let's take the bull by the horns and have a look at... oh, that's a forum, that's no good. A forum in German will be very difficult to translate. Fine if you speak German. I don't think I'm going to find out much more about this one, you know. So, I'm going to make my own judgments. Let me just, if I can get at my typey thing, put in something that I know is going to... something that's more readily available, perhaps. And so if we go to Orchids, this is Findlayanum, I've got this one. Let's go and see what it says about that. Okay, it shows a picture. That's not what I was expecting that to look like when it blooms. Oh, that's made my day. If I get blooms like that, I'll be over the flipping moon. Now this is more like this site. It gives you its common name, if it's got one, which is Findlay's Dendrobium. You know what I'm like, I always say thank you to Mr. Findlay when somebody puts their name to it. Was an English collector out in Borneo. That's taking life and limb in hand for sure. And then in Thailand and in China. So this comes from the Far East, basically. And now I've got a parcel being delivered. I'll just stop for a bit. Sorry about that, but I could see the size of the box. That's a case of wine just arrived. And I'm certainly not unboxing that anywhere near you lot. That's for me. Anyway, out of breath. I shouldn't do running at my age, should I? Still, I still can. Just get out of breath more. Okay, so this one, that's a lovely bloom. Lovely pink tinges, and that looks like quite a strong green. I'm looking forward to that one now. That's upstairs having a rest. That needs to bloom. And it should do. So where were we then? So an English guy found and registered this, Mr. Findlay, and we've been over the places. Now the language on this site is complicated. You might need a dictionary, but you can get the gist of it. A medium to large size, cool growing epiphyte. Right, well that's important. Cool growing. Yeah? So don't get it too hot if you've got this one. I need to bear that in mind next year in its growing season. This time of year nothing gets too warm. So here we are. Altitudes, important. Now that's 1,000 to 1,700 meters. That goes with cool growing. Yeah? You can go on other weather related sites and find these places in the different parts of the world. Even something like Google Maps will take you there. Unfortunately, Google Maps under its normal guise doesn't have contour lines to give you heights above sea level. But there is a version that does. You have to dig around if you want to find that. That took me a long time to get that one. So basically it's found in the Chinese Himalayas for a start. Well, that gives you a clue. So this grows at relatively, I'd say, medium altitudes, hence the cooler, growing type epiphyte. And it also says in mixed forests, and then we get into the language, with compressed bilaterally, each node swollen to 7 nodes turning green-yellow to 22 inches long stems that are sulcate with age and carry deciduous narrowly elliptic or lanceolate acute bright green leaves, and blooms in the winter and spring on a very short auxiliary inflorescence that rises from the nodes near the apex of the mature leafless canes, with a few long-lasting, oh we like that, long-lasting, colour variable, fragrant flowers. Okay, and then it says from fall to winter water should be reduced, but in late winter fertiliser and water should be stopped altogether and only resumed with the onset of new growth. That big long sentence says winter rest. Okay, now it's already a cool grower, so don't let the heat get too high unless you can keep high humidity, in which case you'll get away with it. So I've just learnt a bit about something I wasn't particularly looking up, but I'll have it while it's going. I did say I was going to do some research. So we've now got a cool grower, because it comes from quite high up, and if it didn't say cool growing, you could tell from the altitude and the places. There are ways of finding that out, a separate issue there. And the other important thing I've found out is that the blooms are long lasting. So if I can get some, we're going to have them around for a while. It's also fragrant. So I'm now really looking forward to this coming out of its winter rest. Okay, and when it says from fall to winter water should be reduced, what they're basically saying is that where this comes from, the rainy season fizzles out in a slower basis. It doesn't end on a day or even in a week. Gradually the rainy season fizzles out, the rains slow down, they're not as heavy, they become less frequent. So the amount of rainfall is dropping off in a gradual way, as it does in many places around the world. Apart from true monsoon periods where it does stop pretty quick, just literally over a couple of weeks. But anyway, from where this comes from, the rains slow down and it goes into winter with a lessening of water. And it's an assumption, but you think about what's happening. The way an orchid gets its nutrients is from being washed down from above. Rain hasn't got a lot of nutrients. It's a relatively pure type of water. All you can say about it safely is it's wet. But once it comes in on a tree canopy, it starts washing things off of leaves, all sorts of things. Debris lying around, the rain is washing down through that. And once it actually arrives where the orchid is, it has obtained some nutrients. Okay? So when it's raining heavily, the orchid's probably getting fed to a degree. However, we're now in a period where the rains are easing off. So it's not raining as often. Therefore, the orchid can't get as much nutrients. Yeah? So hence the assumption that as you start reducing the water going into winter, you also greatly reduce the feed. That makes sense to me. Okay, then we go into the fact that it says, and in late winter. So what are we looking at now? In my calendar, autumn is like late October into November and the start of December. And then you get into winter proper in December. And certainly on into January and the first bit of February. That's what I call proper winter. And these are northern hemisphere places where this comes from, so they're of a similar vein. Now if this was Australia, I'd have to stand on my head and do all this because it would be upside down, literally. Nonetheless, whatever part of the world you're in, summer is summer and winter is winter. The name of the months change, not the season. So okay, when we get to late winter, fertiliser and water should be stopped altogether. Is that November? Hell, it's not. This says late winter. To me, that's January, February. So mine's gone up and had its water stopped at exactly the right time. Late winter, not the end of November. So, do your research, okay? This only confirms what I already knew. You know, the logic. There are some parts of the world where the rains do slow right down at the beginning of winter, but not here, okay? So once you get into late winter, you apply your full winter rest. And it says it should only be resumed with the onset of new growth. Now, what would happen in its real world, where it comes from? When would that new growth start? Yeah, well, that new growth would start as the temperatures start to raise up again. Yeah? And you might get a little bit more, well, possibly humidity, but in theory, no rain yet. So the new growth is probably triggered by longer day lengths and a slight rise in temperature during at least the daytime. Okay? And that would coincide with our early spring in this country. Early spring being late February, beginning of March. So I'm going to read into this bit of information, although it doesn't sound much. I'm adding to it with other knowledge and information from other sites. Okay, so this one to me should go into its full winter rest during January. Yeah? And it should last through a fair bit of February. Now, I can't get the day lengths to climb up any faster than the world will let me. I can't do that. Now, where these places come from, their day lengths wouldn't get down anywhere near as short as in the UK. And they would start to elongate earlier in the year than they probably do in the UK. So this is probably going to come out of its winter rest about halfway through February, maybe towards the end of February. But what it does in the UK, I will have to wait and see. But it's highly likely that the new growth and hopefully some buds are going to form around the end of February, when the day length gets, starts to increase at a noticeable rate each day as it goes along. So anyway, don't forget I'm only looking at species here. I'm not messing about trying to look up hybrids and things like that. You're better off with a primary cross, look up the two, in between, and see where you go from there. Now, when I put in this one, let's see what came up. We did orchid species. We've also got Marlowe's orchids. I haven't got a clue what's on that site. Let's go and have a quick look. Probably a pretty picture and not much else. Yeah, that's a selling site. What else does it say? Native to Chinese Himalayas. That looks like most of the information they've got there have been nicked from the site we were just looking at. That's a selling site rather than an information site. What else have we got? Orchid Web. A quick look in there, see if there's anything. Light, medium to high, temperature intermediate to warm. Now that totally disagrees from the areas it comes from and the height above sea level. See what I mean? Take it with a pinch of salt. We now have a disagreement. Yeah? I agree with the light level, but I do not agree with its temperature range because of where it comes from. So I would dispute that and ignore it from that point on. What else have we got down here? Let's have a look at the orchid board one again. As I said, sometimes you get some really good chats on come on, talk to me. Sometimes you get some good information on there. Oh, we might be having Windows 10 doing one of its things. Annoying factor of Windows 10 is that you can't turn off automatic updates, and if it decides it's going to do some updates and you're in the middle of something, then everything just grinds to a halt. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. That's a clue as to how I would go about doing some research. Okay, so that was just a video on some of the places I go and look for information about orchids, and that was pure luck, not judgment, to actually pick on a couple that the information is disputed. The Gentianum and Chapiense at previous times seem to be confused. It's almost as though there's a chain of thought that actually believes they are one and the same species. Now, that may be true and proven later, but at the moment they stay as separate species with little to no information about the plants and culture. Now, you may be able to find your own information about those, but I'm happy that I found the Dendrobium group they belong to. Sorry about that flipping racket, but it is chucking it down again. Yeah, I've found more information than I had when I went into it. I've now got to go upstairs and get 2 plants out of their winter rest and bring them back down in here, which is, I certainly didn't think I'd be doing that as part of that little video. And then we had a look at another Dendrobium and found a lot more information about it. And basically for that Dendrobium, instead of talking about how I was doing the research, I actually did the research as we went along. That's why it took longer. I thought, well, I'm here now. I'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So the Findlayanum Dendrobium I am looking after okay. Now it's having its winter rest at the proper time of year, not November. I'm going to keep going on about that. It should do well and it should bloom, but I'm growing it well already. I didn't really want information on how to grow it. Looking at the size of the canes and everything that it's done this year, the growing part of that orchid is fine. I will bear in mind that it's a cool grower. Now certainly last year that was up near the roof. It was getting pretty damn warm, but it was getting a lot of water and feed and the humidity stayed high. It did well under those circumstances. There's no point in changing what's not broke. Okay, so just a little insight into some of the places to look. You may find better places, different places, it's entirely up to you. But my first port of call is always orchidspecies.com. And I get half to 3/4 of my information from that one site alone. But as I said, I did pick on 2 good ones this time and got nothing, so I had to venture into unknown territories. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope this has helped some people. If you haven't got access to the internet, firstly you won't be watching my video and you'll be restricted to books, but you won't have heard that, will you? You know what I mean. If you haven't got the internet, you wouldn't be watching my video, would you? And you'd be looking at books, and there's still some good stuff to be got from books. I would just add in, try and get the most recent books you can, because information changes as time goes on. Thanks for watching. See you again next time. Who knows? Maybe we'll get some sunshine. Maybe.